Yeah, exactly. Well, the issue is that the leaves that are dying, they're everywhere. So I'm like, we'll be out here breaking every single word. I love it, but I can think of better things to do with my.
Welcome everyone to our nice, cool room. My name's Pat Vaughn, and I'm chairman of the Charleston Area Alliance, and I wanted to welcome everyone here today and to thank the people that are going to be presenting to us today for the work that they're doing. It's a war out there for a lot of these folks, and we really appreciate them taking their time out of their schedules to be here with us. So again, welcome you all. Thanks. And let me introduce Joellen Zachs, who's going to kind of MC us today.
Thank you, Pat. Again, welcome. I'm sorry it's this sort of occasion that gets you over to the Charleston Area Alliance office, but we're always honored to have the community with us and bring folks up to date with important information. I think you share our gratitude for everyone throughout the state and this Atlantic region who's pulling together to deal with the catastrophic events Friday nights, from our government leaders and first responders, utility companies, the healthcare workers, and all the citizens that are pulling together to move us forward. You might ask, well, why are we worried about business issues right now in light of some of the human dimensions of the overwhelming storm? But I'd like to explain that a little bit. You know, the Alliance is we're a region's economic, business, and community development organization, and we have a big responsibility to the community. And what we want to do today is help business get back to business. And why does that matter? Number one, businesses are providing life-saving services, goods and services right now: food, water, gasoline, all the things that are necessary to literally to sustain life and the way we're used to living. They're providing jobs and income that West Virginians need right now to feed their families. And in a time when the economy is still very uncertain, lack of a paycheck or a dip in business income can really take a big toll on citizens. Last but not least, our businesses are generating tax revenues. They're going to fund our public services. So when a business is down, it's not just that business owner, it's the whole community that is going to feel the effects. So what we want to do today is just share some very brief information for businesses and how they can get back up and running, and just highlight some of the resources that are out there. Obviously this is pulled together very quickly. This is not the definitive briefing on these issues. We'll be providing more information, and there are great federal, state, and local resources and leaders out there who are working on this as well. We just want to pass along what we know and encourage you to reach out to us as your community development, business development organization. We like to say if we don't have the answers, we'll try to find someone who does, and be a resource for our community. We have a lot of great speakers who are dealing with the crisis on a minute-by-minute basis, and I really want to thank them for taking time out of their schedule to be here today. And so we're going to make this brief. They're going to give some quick updates on some issues. I'm going to ask you to hold your questions to the end because they have some really important information to share. And then we'll have some time for some Q&A. Keep in mind that this is really a business briefing, so while there's a whole host of issues and questions you might have as a citizen, we really like to focus on the business issues because there are people way more expert than we are to talk about the humanitarian and other issues that people are grappling with. We have some great handouts before you leave in the back. And be sure to take that because they have some good resources, and we'll be continuing to feed that information out to our members and to the community. And so if you have information, telephone numbers, websites, anything that you think would be helpful to your fellow business folks, let us know. We'll be continuing to push that out. So I hope you have an agenda. We have a very distinguished panel. They all have amazing resumes. I'm not going to waste your time on that. If you want to Google them, but these are the folks who are on the front lines of this, and they know what they're talking about. So first going to hear from the lady of the hour, Tanya Hotmer from AEP, and then we'll turn it over to some of our government representatives, and then we'll get into some of the legal and business representatives who have some expertise. I'd also like to thank, in addition to our board members who are here, Pat Bond and Diana Solwaka, who's a small business person who is currently on hiatus, as they say, due to the power outage. We have some amazing staff people here, Alliance staff, if you raise your hand, they are here to help. Susie Salisbury also serves on the city council. She's playing 2 roles, so she's a great resource. And just continue to reach out to us, because that's what we're here for. With that, I'm just going to turn it over to the lady everyone wants to talk to right now, Tanya Mother, to bring us up to date.
All right. First, I want to say thank you to Joellen and the Alliance for putting this together, because actually, in a time like this, beyond just updates of where we stand, I think this is a critical opportunity for us to kind of educate on how the restoration process works, get some information out there, and make things a little more clear for the public. So with that, I'm going to jam as much information as I can in 5 minutes and kind of get straight to the point. As most of you are aware, the situation that occurred on Friday night is, it's not isolated to West Virginia. You know, we're not dealing with this alone. There were 75 mile an hour plus winds that went 700 miles in 10 hours and actually affected 10 states. As I said, this isn't West Virginia alone. Unfortunately, the magnitude of the storm was such as a hurricane, but without advance notice. Now, why is it important to make that statement? With advance notice, if you have a storm coming, you can go ahead and you can have supplies on standby, you can have assistance, you can have line workers on standby ready to move in. The situation did not allow that. This was a 10-hour storm, came through, happened, you have to start reacting from that point. In the outages, I'll go ahead and tell you, the outage numbers we've seen at the peak was actually over 550,000 in APCO territories. Now, this is significantly well above and beyond the winter 2009 storm. So if that'll kind of help put things into perspective for you. With this affecting beyond just West Virginia, you look at all the other states being affected, there's been an issue with collecting resources, bringing in line workers. Normally we would borrow from our sister AEP companies such as AEP Ohio. They need their line workers right now. We would borrow from maybe a First Energy or a Dominion. But those resources are tied up, and additionally everyone's trying to go out and get resources. What we've done is we've reached out as far as we can. We're still reaching. We currently have over 2,000 crews on the ground working on the restoration process, from West Virginia to Texas to Nebraska to South Dakota, Missouri, Mississippi, Alabama, all here in this state working on efforts to restore power. At this point, we've restored over 150,000 customers since the storm occurred on Friday, and at this time, 230,000 remain without power in West Virginia. I'm going to be very candid and state that due to the extent of the damage, and I'm going to kind of explain that here in a little bit with a picture diagram, we do expect the restoration process to go well into the weekend, including Saturday and Sunday. This is not a small event, this is a widespread event, this is a devastating event. So with that behind us, what I'm going to do is kind of address some of the basic questions that I'm getting kind of left and right out in the public. And the first question is, why do our times why do our ETAs come in, it'll come on sooner, or get moved out, it'll come on later? First thing you have to understand is there's 2 steps to restoring power when a storm first occurs. You get an initial, what's called a global estimated restoration time. A global estimated restoration time is more based on statistical type data. It's based on storms in the past, the number of outages, this is what we anticipate. Then once crews come in and start assessing via aerial, flying over lines, via getting on the ground, walking, using 4-wheelers, they then start getting an up-close view of the extent of the damage. In some cases, you find that the damage is not as extensive as anticipated and your power comes on sooner. In other cases, and unfortunately what is happening in this storm, is you find that the extent of the damage is beyond what was initially anticipated. Once you're able to get out there, get hands-on, and look at the damage up close. So that's the answer to the first question on why restoration times keep moving. Another question I get is priorities. Do you prioritize how you restore power? The answer to that is yes, we do prioritize. We look at circuits that have hospitals, we look at circuits that have emergency broadcasting, we look at circuits that have major grocery stores, and we do start restoring in that process. And the reason being is obvious. Why would you want a hospital back on before you would want your personal home back on? Once you get past those bigger restoration and you start getting into areas where grocery stores are, where gas stations are, and you start seeing circuits come up, then once again you get the question, well, why is the Kroger on, but I'm not on over here? Well, there's two things. One, that clearly means you're on a different circuit than Kroger's is, and I'm going to explain this here in just a few minutes. But secondly, if we have to pick between two circuits, it's more important in a time like this to get the grocery store and the gas station back on so that individuals have access to supplies versus providing comfort in a single home at a time such as this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just really quickly throw a slide up here, if you could, and kind of explain what's going on and address another question that I get. Restoring power is not just a matter of flipping a switch. There's actually a series of events that occur. Now, delivering electricity, everybody knows that it starts out at a power plant. But the misunderstanding starts occurring when you hear transmission lines. Maybe in the news you hear, for instance, in this case, we had 70 transmission destroyed. We got 50 substations. And they don't understand what all this means. So we get questions about, well, here's my home, and in my neighborhood we've got 5 trees down. Why can't you just come out and move these 5 trees and get my neighborhood back up? Well, the problem is moving these 5 trees, fixing these local distribution lines means absolutely nothing if somewhere further back in the process there's damage. So significant damage that occurs at a transmission line is then not going to go to a substation. It's not going to go up to the heavy overhead lines, and it's not going to go down to the distribution to your home. So critically, we have to start looking at the things that people can't see. I mean, these big transmission lines, these substations, they're not typically right there in your backyard, and you don't see what we're doing. Just to give you an example, I'm going to have a picture thrown up here. This is one of those big transmission lines. That's an example of the extent of some of the infrastructure damage that we're looking at. You can go back. Once we get transmission fixed, which is a major issue, this is not something, as you can see from the picture, 1 or 2 crew trucks can go out and fix alone. And that's in addition to getting the supplies there on hand to restore it. Then we've got all of these neighborhood substations. Like I said, we've got 50 plus substations out. If you look at an area like St. Albans has been a big question. St. Albans is served by a very large substation. And outside of that substation, there's 2 different areas of transmission going. Well, 3 of the 5 circuits in that substation are completely locked out, meaning somewhere, reflect your mind back to that original picture, they're not getting transmission in at all. So that's why it's taking so long to get areas like that back up. Now, as I said, it's got 5, but suddenly last night people started seeing little parts of St. Albans come up. And that's because I said 3 are cold, 2 are hot. So those 2 circuits are able to go out, and as long as there's no additional damage from any of these points into your home, your power is able to come back up. So that's very quick, very to the point, very direct, and I hope that helps you understand just a little bit. Oh, one other thing I will add, sorry Joellen, is you know, we've been expressing, we've been tweeting, we've been Facebooking, we've been in the media. You know, as a state, it is critical right now that we act as neighbors, that we work together and we support one another. Appalachian Power, we are teaming up with the American Red Cross of West Virginia, and you can actually go to their website, I believe it's redcrosswb.org, if you need assistance, because we do know that as a good neighbor, it's important that we make sure that we help get supplies out there, whether it be food, water, shelter. So as the days continue to come, please, be neighbors to one another, help out, contact organizations such as the Red Cross, the food banks. It's not a time to be proud. It's a time to think about health, safety, friends, and neighbors. So sometimes we just have to put our pride to the back and do what we need to do to take care of ourselves and our families.
Let's give Tanya an A. And we'll have time for Q&A in a little bit. For those of you who are using social media personally or in your business to communicate, we are tweeting this. We're just sending out the hashtag is CAA StormBiz, B-I-Z, if you'd like to forward the information that's being imparted today. We have a few government representatives whom I'd like to introduce, and then we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty business issues. Dave Mulgard is the city manager, City of Charleston. Busy guy. I'm glad he could make it today. Do you have any updates, David? And we'd love to have you share whatever you can. Do you want to come right up?
Thank you. I think this is a great idea to get businesses together to talk about business issues and as it relates to this disaster. One of the big questions that we're getting is, why is my street not open? Why are there trees still down? And I can assure you we have had crews out there. In those areas where we don't have the streets open, and there's one significant one up, I know in Dogwood, there's about 17 residents up there that can't get out. It's because there are power lines that are intermingled with the trees. And while it seems pretty logical that I don't have power and these power lines are not generized, the fact of the matter is there are people that have generators, and that those generators, if not hooked up correctly or not decommissioned as it relates to the breakers, can backfeed into those lines and cause a significant safety issue. We've not lost anybody in Charleston, and we have not had any fatalities as a result of this disaster. We want to keep it that way. So your patience in that regard is most appreciated. Monday wasn't a garbage pickup day, so we stationed 3 packers throughout the city. Those are out there again today at Cantley Drive, Park and Ride, at the Kanawha City Rec Center, and at the North Charleston Rec Center. So I know that there are issues with freezers and food, and it's going to start causing some problems. So if you want to unload that at one of our sites, they will be out there till 7 o'clock tonight. Garbage pickup will continue on their regular scheduled hours throughout the week, including the 4th of July. We have refuse directors that are refuse personnel that are willing to give up their holiday to come out and help us throughout this period of time. So your regular routes will continue as scheduled. Kanawha City continues to be a relief center for people who don't have power and need a place to stay at night. The other rec centers are open. They won't be open on the 4th of July, but they will be open on all of the other days for relief from the heat. The swimming pool at Kanawha City and at the King Center will be open on the 4th of July if people are looking for relief from the heat. You might have some question about the fireworks this evening and the symphony. That's on as scheduled at 8 o'clock. There is some reports that a weather system might be moving in, so we're going to play that by ear, quite frankly. But come down if you want to try to relieve yourself of some of the stress that you're feeling as a result of this. We've got a good program for you this evening. On the business side of things, we've had a number of people calling us about downed trees affecting property and property damage, and saying that this is a city issue. We can sort through those issues, but I would encourage you to go ahead and contact your own homeowners or your own insurance company and not wait for somebody to come and deal with your damage issues. Again, we'll sort through those issues in the days to come. The end of June was the end of a fiscal year for us, and so a number of business licenses were to be renewed by that time. Hopefully most of you are on the ball and have already done that. But if you hadn't done that and you're having issues dealing with this storm, we will give some leeway until the end of the month so that people can get their renewals. We're not going to come after you and shut down your business. during this period of time, but do try to get that into us as soon as possible. Likewise, as it relates to business returns, B&O tax, city service fees, or any other fees that might be due. Typically, those are, although the end of the quarter was at the end of June, those returns are typically not due until the end of the month. So hopefully you'll have enough time to get those in, but if you do need a little extra time, I would encourage you to call the city collector's office or whoever you're remitting those fees or taxes to and ask for a little bit of time, and we'll be understandable. We'll as a matter of course, give an extra till August 5th before we'll tack on any penalties, or unless we've heard from you otherwise. So if you have any questions regarding those issues, I would encourage you to call the department head or the person who is in charge of the issue at the city directly, and let them know that you are down and will need a little extra time. And for anything else, I would encourage you to visit the city website. We will try to update that on a day-to-day basis as it relates to anything regarding the city and anything that we can do for you. I'll take questions, or I'll stick around after this to assist in any way I can.
We'll save the questions till the end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're very pleased that a couple of our congressional representatives have sent representatives to this event with some update on what the federal government is able to provide and some information resources. Rochelle Goodwin from Senator Rockefeller's office and Mary Eckerson from Congresswoman Capito's office, I know just came from a briefing with FEMA with some updated information. Would you like, both of you just like to come up and offer an update or a message from the senator, congresswoman, or phone number, or your personal,
Don't fight.
personal information?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that Jay Rockefeller has been very much engaged as this has all unfolded. He, as you all know, was a governor once and understands certainly the dynamics that happen when you have an event like this. Has been working both with the governor's office. The governor has spoken back and forth about the needs and how to address those, but also by leveraging his interests with the telecommunications companies, the power companies, the water companies, and the federal government about how we can move forward and bring resources to West Virginia. You know, I appreciate that we have limited time today and everybody has a very busy day, and today really the issue is what we're going to be doing for businesses. So I won't go through all of the most recent information that FEMA is giving, that the National Guard is giving. There are lots of teams in addition to the Red Cross and the businesses who are working through all of the emergency needs. And everyone, I think, is on board working together. The congressional offices are working together, local and state governments are working together to try to prioritize highest needs and to address some of the most emergency concerns and then move through the list of priorities as we go. And we heard a little bit about that from Tanya about how AP is operating. I think that's similar to how all of the agencies who are cooperating are working. But I would say if you have any particular requests, questions, areas where you feel like are resource deserts, either for yourself in your own residence or in your community or with your business, please feel free to call our office. We will be picking up voicemails and emails throughout the state. We have 4 regional offices around the state, in addition to our DC office, and we'll be covering those even when we don't have folks in the office on the 4th of July. We'll be picking up those. I know there's a lot of need, and as was said, we're not going to get through this in the next 24 hours, so please feel free to call. My information is on the sheet that's circulating, but I'd be happy to give cards to anyone who would need them.
Thank you. Mary?
Thank you, thank you. Mary Elizabeth Eckerson. I'm Shelley Capito's District Director, and she is sitting home right now with no electricity as well, and dead cell phone batteries. And, you know, like the rest of us, is just muddling through this the best we can. But I don't want to, Rocky pretty well covered all the services that are going on. This is an emergency declaration, which FEMA is pushing resources to the state, and the state's distributing through the National Guard. They have meals, water, ice, generators being pushed throughout the state where the needs are. We found them all to be very responsive. All the congressional offices are working together. Feel free to use our office as a resource for whatever you need. I thank you, Tanya and Dave, for your updates on what's going on with the city and AEC. I know everybody's doing the best they can, and we're here to support and do whatever we can to help. And if there's a need you see we can fill, please let us know. Thank you.
And there is a handout we just got from the Small Business Administration on the back that has some updates for businesses on resources and places you can file claims. We do have representatives from the State Small Business Development Office. I think we'll save that to the end because that'll kind of package up all the issues that you as a business owner or employee might be dealing with. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Michael Schultz from Dinsmore & Scholl to give us just a basic update if you're a business owner or operating a business, some of the legal and insurance issues you might need to start thinking about right now or yesterday, hopefully.
Thank you, Joellen. One of the last things you probably think you need or want to see after a disaster is a lawyer. Eric Kinder and I are seemingly out of our element here, but in fact, there are some practical things that you should think about after a disaster and what's happening that you may or may not want to consult with a lawyer if you have one. If you don't, maybe find one. What I want to spend just a very few moments talking to you about is insurance. And I automatically saw at least half of you with eyes that blurred over. Many of you, like me, have probably spent a lot of time in the last few days trying to get through to an insurance company. No doubt under either your automobile or your homeowner's insurance. But I'm here to talk about something else, and that is, do you have business interruption insurance? Nowadays, more often, if you have commercial property insurance, there's a coverage known as indirect business loss coverage. And what this insurance covers is indemnification for losses or expenses for the interruption of your business. That interruption could be for a day, could be for 3 days. Some of you may have businesses that continue to be affected and may be affected for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. My first and most important point is get a copy of your insurance policies. It seems basic, but as you may have noticed in the last few days, when you were trying to find that number for your insurance company, if you didn't have the magnet on the refrigerator, get a copy of your insurance policy. Your insurance policy, be it commercial property, or if you have a business interruption, has what is covered and things to look for when you look through that policy. Scope of coverage, or in today's world, increasingly we're going to plain English insurance policies. What we will insure, what the insurance companies will insure, it's usually the first part of the policy. Read that, and that tells you what is covered. And it will detail, hopefully, the financial losses that will be covered that your business may have incurred as a result of an event such as this. Figure out a section, cause of loss. Simply put, insurance companies may reserve to themselves the determination of whether or not an event such as this is in fact covered. But that's all going to be covered in a section called cause of loss. You may have multiple causes. In events such as this, for instance, you may, and this is just an example, you may have had your computers damaged because the wind blew over a tree that blew out windows that caused physical damage to your computers. You may have also had computer damage or damage to your computer system from a power surge caused by a tree fall blowing up a transformer or a lightning strike. Those are two different causes, one of which may be insurable, one of which may not be insurable. Look for that under cause of loss or multiple causes of losses. Some insurance policies have what's called extra expenses provisions. For those of you, and there was a representative here from Quaker Steak, we have 2 locations, one of which operational, one of which is not. And so there's extra expense involved in trying to move the active operations from one location to another. Those sorts of extra expenses and trying to keep your business going during this sort of event may be covered by provision in your policy. For those of you who have multiple locations, your policy will have a covered premise provision. Make sure when you read that you have all of your premises covered. Read about the limits of liability. There might be a dollar limit, there might be a time limit. Oftentimes you have a 30-day provision in your policy. The insurance company will pay for losses for 30 days because of business interruption. So get your insurance policy, and the second most important thing to do is read it. Again, it sounds simple. Liability considerations beyond a business interruption policy. Secure your location. If your windows are broken, patch them up. Secondly, and Eric Kinder will talk to you in a few moments about this, secure your employees, secure your customers. Lots of issues about employees, but secure them as well. Secure them personally and in their employment. Now is a good chance for you to actually get a copy of your CGL or Commercial General Liability policy, even if you may not need it. Hopefully you won't. And Dave said we didn't have any loss of life in Charleston, which is great. You may not need that CGL policy, but use an event like this as a wake-up call to drag that policy out, get it if you don't have it, read it, and make sure that it really covers the sort of risks that your business may have. I think this sort of event is a wake-up call to everybody to ensure that they do have what they need, including with insurance needs. So if I can leave you with 3 points. Number 1, get your insurance policy. Number 2, read them. And number 3, if you have questions, maybe lawyers aren't so bad in a time like this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. I know we have a handout there with all that information, and again, we will have that available and distribute it, so if you weren't able to take all that notes. Now that you've found your policy and you're trying to get your claim resolved, we have some tips for how to work effectively with your insurance company. And with that, I'd like to introduce Frank Bayer from Commercial Insurance Services, who's working 24/7, clicking away as this program is unfolding, dealing with the needs of our area businesses. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Joellen. I have a double whammy. I'm a lawyer and an insurance guy. So, we'll talk about that. And my thoughts are this. I agree with everything that Michael just said to you about get your stuff, study it. One of the most frustrating parts of an event like this is that people think when they buy liability insurance, they've bought lawsuit insurance. They haven't bought lawsuit insurance. People that buy property insurance think that they've bought coverage for any disaster and anything that happens. They have not. For example, business interruption, one of the most sought after coverages in a claim scenario like this, doesn't apply unless there has been a physical loss to the building that you have insured by a covered loss, not otherwise excluded. So for example, let's say that I own a restaurant and I'm on a street whose power has been out, but I have no damage to my building. I have nothing that's happened to my building other than I turn the lights on and nothing has happened. I don't have any business interruption insurance that's going to pay. So that's a shocking realization to most people in the room. So that's the first thing that you need to understand. And again, we could go for hours on the minutia of all of the insurance implications, and yes, you will probably want to call your lawyer once you start to get out your policy to read it, because it is very hard to read and understand. And it's purposely designed that way to apply to a myriad of situations. that you can't draft a policy for a specific event because it would only apply to that one event. So you have to apply to many different events. And over the years, they've developed exclusions and limitations and all the various parts of the policy. And it's very difficult. But I will tell you this. Some of the more common things that aren't business related, like a homeowner, someone who has a big yard and has a huge tree that falls in the front of the yard and doesn't touch anything, not covered. Cost of repair and removal on you. Take that same scenario, big tree, clobbers the house, smashes the house in two. The cost of the removal of the tree, the cost of the repair to the house, everything associated with that claim completely covered, minus your deductible. So that's another big shocker to most people out there in the public. They got trees all over the place. They think that, I'll call my insurance guy and they think that we got chainsaws and we're going to go out and start cutting up the trees. We don't. I say to folks some practical advice about how to deal with your insurance company, which is what Joellen asked me to talk about, is that some of the first advice I can give to people in a crisis is act as if you don't have insurance. Do what a normal, reasonable human being would do. Call a repair person. Take pictures. Try to secure your property. Keep track of all your receipts and everything that you've paid to try to repair and replace your property. It may be days or weeks before an actual physical adjuster gets out to your property. And that frustrates the living daylights out of the policyholder who's paid for the coverage, just like it frustrates the AP customer who can't get their air conditioning going. So there's a whole lot of things going on with this, and we will quickly devolve into too much detail, but I did want to highlight just a couple of minutes of wordings out of the policy that kind of bring to life some of the points that I've made a little earlier. This is from a business interruption and extra expense coverage form. I'm going to read you one sentence. And again, all these policies are a bit different, so you can't read one and assume that you're reading them all. You do have to get your own and look at your own because they are different company by company, sometimes even insured by insured. But the policy starts out and says, we'll cover your lost business interruption. But it says that, here's the actual wording, we will pay the actual loss of business income you sustain due to the necessary suspension, in quotes, of your operations, in quotes, during the period of restoration, in quotes. Each of those three quoted terms are in turn defined very specifically about what they do and don't include. The suspension caused by direct physical loss of or damage to property at premises which are described in the declarations and for which a business income limit of insurance is shown in the declaration. So you basically have to have bought the coverage at a specific location that has been physically damaged by a covered cause of loss before you start wrangling with the forensic accountants and the CPAs and the lawyers about what the actual loss recovery is going to be. So if you can't satisfy those four prerequisites, you don't have any business interruption coverage. Now, some other things that I thought would be helpful for a briefing like today is that, and again, this gets way, way too technical, and you can't do this in a 5 or 10 minute delivery, but remember Michael talked about the cause of loss form? The broadest cause of loss form is called the special cause of loss form in most homeowners and business policies. By special, it means that everything's covered unless it's excluded. The more narrow version of this policy is called the named perils policy. And that policy says only things that are named here are covered. So I'd rather have a special policy which says that everything's covered except if it's knocked out by an exclusion than one that says I have to prove as the policyholder that it fits in one of these exceptions. So in a special cause of loss form, the policyholder starts out an advantage because it's the carrier's legal duty to establish that one of the exclusions apply. And one of the exclusions in the special cause of loss form, the generic, general special cause of loss form that most of you have in your homeowner and maybe in your business, is utility services. That's an exclusion. Now when you read into that detailed exclusion, it says these are things, again, I'm going to read you, that are not covered. The failure of power, communication, water, or other utility service supplied to the described premises, however caused, if the failure, 1, originates away from the described premises, So you could have a scenario where you do have a transformer or some electrical device that is exploding and arcing and blowing up at your place. That likely would not be fit in that exclusion because it didn't happen away from the described premises. But if you're the restaurant and the transformer's down the street and it blows up and your restaurant's fine, you're probably going to get knocked out by that exclusion. Or originates at the described premise, but only if such failure involves equipment used to supply the utility service to the described premises from a source away from the described premises. So loss or damage caused by a surge of power is also excluded. Again, Michael talked about computer power surges. There are other policies like computer policies. There's mechanical breakdown policies for spoilage of food, like if you have a refrigeration unit and you're an ice cream factory and your equipment fails because of power loss. You would probably have negotiated or should have negotiated specific coverage for power failure for your perishable goods. If you have a clothing store and the power goes out, you have nothing that perishes. So it makes a difference as to what kind of business you have. It says, here's a little give back. But if the failure or surge of power or the failure of communications, water, or other utility service results in a covered cause of loss, we will pay for the loss or damage caused by that covered cause of loss. So again, there's a give back for certain scenarios. You can start to see why it's absolutely impossible to give anybody a briefing on insurance generally without knowing the specific facts of their business loss, their policy, what they bought, what they didn't, what their facts are. Every claim is different, and everybody's policy is different. One or two more points and then I'm going to sit down. There is a policy called an equipment breakdown policy, like if I had an ice cream factory or a distributorship or an ice company, and I knew that if I didn't have power, I'd be out of business. I would want to buy some sort of mechanical breakdown coverage. And it does cover for artificially generated electric current, including electrical arcing that disturbs electrical devices, appliances, or wires in this mechanical breakdown policy. And it also includes service interruption, which was excluded in this other policy, but it's included here. Any insurance provider for business income or extra expense is extended to apply to your loss, damage, or expense caused by the interruption of utility service. So you can start to see, you kind of pull your hair out, and you might want to put the lawyer on speed dial or your insurance person on speed dial to be able to try to figure out your particular claim. Lastly, I'll just talk a little bit about spoilage because, in my own homeowner, I'm day 4 with no power. I had to throw out all my food, and I called my agent, who's me, and I called my claims person in my office, and I said, Mary Jo, what do I got in the way of food spoilage coverage? And she goes, well, you have a coverage, you have a limited coverage, it's a sub-limit in the policy. I said, how much is it? $500 on my homeowner. I said, okay, great. She goes, after deductible. How much is my deductible? $5,000. And I go, I don't have beluga caviar in my refrigerator, so I don't really have any coverage. I smartly bought a really high deductible. Yeah, that's great when the premium is low, but now that I want to use it, I can't even use it for my little $500 loss. So I got no coverage for my food spoilage under my homeowner. But if I owned a C-store, or I owned some other kind of business that had, maybe I owned 50 C-stores, I have lots of potential perishable coverage, perishable items. So there is food spoilage coverage in those kinds of policies. It does apply to change in temperature or humidity resulting from mechanical breakdown. Again, there's that word mechanical breakdowns. You have to buy that kind of policy, not just a general property policy. Or mechanical failure of refrigerating, cooling, or humidity control apparatus or equipment only while such equipment or apparatus is at the described premises. So there's lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff we could talk about. I thought that would be limited to my 5 or 10 minutes. I'll stick around if there's questions later, but it's very specific and unique to each person's policy.
Frank, I don't know if I should, thank you. I don't know why I should be happy or sad that my trees didn't crash into my house, but now I'm happy.
That's a surprise to
Yeah.
people. I mean, people don't realize that. When we get the call, we have to say, no, you ain't got it, and it's not very much fun. We're doing it all day, every day.
Well, the tree folks are doing very well right now, so we're glad we're creating jobs and stimulating the economy there. For those of you who have employees who are open or not open, you, I'm sure, have some questions. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Eric Kinder from Small and Thomas Babel, who heads up their right along employee relations group with some things you need to be thinking about as an employer.
Thank you, Joelle. I appreciate the opportunity to address some of the issues that I know employers throughout the valley, here in Charleston, Kanawha County, and really throughout the state are dealing with. I would say if there is one main takeaway that I think all employers should be aware of at this time, or really any time of crisis, is this is not the moment to be a stickler on exactly the way your employment policies are written, especially as it relates to leave, absenteeism, and tardiness. If you've got individuals who are unable to get into work, give them time off. If they are addressing a crisis at their home, they don't have power. They have a parent, they have a child that needs medical attention, or that needs more attention, especially in this weather and in this climate, give them the time off. Don't try to parse out the FMLA in great detail. It's a wonderful act. I'm not criticizing the act, but don't worry about whether or not it technically fits as leave that is required under federal law. Be smart, be conscientious to your employees, give them that time off. And it will repay you, number one, from an HR perspective. People remember the employers that treat them well and those that don't. And also, this is a small community. Word gets out as to who treats their people well and who doesn't. So if you need a business reason to not be technical in the way you enforce your policies right now, there it is. Hopefully you don't. What about the situation, do you pay them, do you not pay them? Under the law, individuals who don't come into work, they're hourly employees, you do not have an obligation to pay them. Now I would say, much like I talked about, don't be a stickler on your rules as far as leave. Don't necessarily be a stickler on how somebody has to request overtime or PTO in advance. This is a difficult time for everyone. This is an opportunity to say, you know what, normally we ask you for you to make a vacation request 2 weeks in advance. Nobody had 2 weeks advance notice of the storm. You need a couple days off, we can give you those with pay, we'll give you those vacation days. Even though you didn't request them in the general policy period that we have. Again, be conscientious of your employees. But as a general rule, individuals that don't come into work, there is no obligation to pay under the law, under federal law, under state law. If you are one of the businesses that are actually working overtime, and there's a number of them out there right now, obviously keeping track of your employees' hours is vitally important, but I would also say you are going to have an obligation to make sure that you are ensuring that your employees are working safely, that are getting enough rest. I mean, the individuals from AEP and what have you, you want to get that power back on for folks. Your employees, your crew workers, they want to do the same thing. Those are their neighbors and they're hurting. And I know people that work for AEP, I know people that work for power companies, water companies. They want to get out and they want to take care of their neighbors. And they're likely to push themselves too far. You have an obligation to ensure that your people are working safely. As David had said, we have been fortunate. There has not been a fatality because of this. I don't want to hear about one, and you certainly don't want to be dealing with a fatality because somebody pushed themselves too far and started making poor decisions because they've been working too many hours. So I don't know your crews, I can't give you a time frame. I can't say at 14 hours and 37 minutes, that's enough in the day, you gotta let them off after that. I don't know your folks, you do. But be aware, be conscientious of those sort of concerns. If your business is actually closed as a result of this, once again, there is no obligation to pay. But I would say your obligations to make payroll on your regular schedule are very, very important under the law of West Virginia. That is a primary concern for you. Even if your computers are down, I would say there is a way to make estimates based on hand calculations. Those of us that can still do math by hand, and I'm not one of them. Find a way to do that. The state of West Virginia takes that very seriously. The federal government takes that very seriously for very good reason. You've got people, they need that money right now. And so, I mean, if you can estimate it when the computers come back on, you can do the calculations, you can make sure that it's right. and perhaps work with an attorney to figure out exactly what you have to do if you made a mistake, but try to get money into the hands of your employees on your regular schedule, even if it is going to be a difficult situation for you. And I appreciate that it's tough for you right now, but I want you to know the state takes that obligation extremely seriously. Now, those are the sort of issues, Joella, that I have been dealing with, that I've been taking phone calls on. I will stay around if anybody has any specific questions for their particular business to sort of help them through this situation. But thank you.
Just a quick question. Is there a distinction between salaried and hourly employees in terms of if the business is closed and duty for compensation?
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Yeah, I would say if you are talking about a salaried exempt employee, if they take a day off for personal reasons, you are allowed to quote unquote dock their pay under the law. Now, I wouldn't do it in this circumstance unless you normally do it for people that take personal days off. If you are closed yourself, you have closed the business for whatever reason, I would say you cannot, under that circumstance, dock a salaried exempt individual's pay. But most individuals, if you're closed, there is no obligation. So that's sort of the one little caveat, the one exception.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce John Calvert from Advanced Technical Solutions, who will just share a few tips on if you're having computer or technical issues. I know their advice is always plan, but people don't always do that. So now what? How can you get back to business? Thank you. And if I'd like to apologize, John also serves on the Alliance Board of Directors, as does Tanya, and in my haste to introduce everyone, I neglected to mention that he performs a valuable service for our organization. So I'd like to thank you on that level too as a board member.
Very much.
Yeah.
Good morning, folks. First, my apologies. I am not a lawyer.
No apology necessary.
And I will say that this past week I returned from a week at a Canadian wilderness camp to an Elkview wilderness camp, and I haven't had much sleep lately. But what we're looking at in terms of your IT environment is extremely important. And if the question is, my computer is busted, what do I do now? I think maybe prayer would be in order. So I will talk about the importance of planning with your IT environment. I was able to find a little article last night that I have back here. I would recommend that you pick this up and look at it if you aren't doing any planning, because it is so essential and so critical that you protect your IT environment, because we all depend upon them so much. I'm reminded of a quote by C. Northcote Parkinson 50 years ago, probably said. He was a British author, that delay is the deadliest form of denial. And if you have been delaying thinking about planning for your IT survivability, you are treading on very dangerous turf. The article that's back there, and I will run through it very quickly because it sums it up better than I could. It mentions that a disaster recovery or business continuity plan is a documented and practiced plan for how your organization will act in response to a disaster. Now, there are several types of disasters that can befall IT. They're man-made and they're natural. But for small businesses, more than 30%, as opposed to 10% for large businesses, small businesses are affected more by natural disasters than they are man-made disasters. And the article goes on to point out several steps that you should think about as we consider disaster recovery planning. The first is to conduct an impact analysis, threat analysis, and impact scenarios to create a plan. Now you hear this and you go, well, how in the heck do I do something like that? This is the point where I think it's a good idea. If you have an IT department, or even if you just have someone that helps you out, that you seek out an organization, and there are several in high-quality organizations in this area that can help with this. IT consultants and businesses who are designed to respond to their customers' emergencies, who have a business model that is based around survivability in in order for them to be able to respond to your problems. Seek out these people. If you have to get a limited relationship going with them, I recommend that you do that. They are professionals, we are professionals, and I have a colleague with me that can answer questions on how to plan and how to react to these types of disasters. Secondly, identify the most cost-effective disaster recovery solution that meets the recovery point objective and recovery time objective. I also have a couple of handouts in the back that describe what these two objectives are and how and why they're important to your organization. Identify external contacts, contractors, insurance agents, etc. Third, create a formal, this is very, very important, create a formal document and plan and practice this plan, test the plan, tweak the plan, ask for information or get your consultant to go over the plan with you so they can help you with that. The fourth was to test the plan. And finally, fortunately, you can begin to think about how you're going to flesh out your IT environment in the future by leveraging the technologies that are available to you out there now. Technologies such as virtualization, providing notebooks to your more critical employees so they can operate from cafes if they have to start instituting the idea of a mobile workforce so that folks can get to their critical data and continue business operations from wherever they are. Backup and recovery services, from large to small, you can use carbonite. You can use, I wouldn't recommend some of the ones over in Northern Virginia these days, but there are online services that can back up your critical data for you. Use communications technologies like voice over IP and IP telephony, and also consider off-site replication. There are some options for you if you own your own network devices, such as servers. You can back those up to places like Carbonite. If you don't have that kind of environment, you can also consider virtual hosting. Hosted servers don't belong to you. You pay for them monthly. They are protected by companies who have SAS 70 certifications, who have generators and cooling, redundant everything out there for you. And it's a good option. Again, Christian Lorenz and myself will be here to answer any of your questions. Please pick up these things. If I run out, and I probably will, we have business cards back there. Please call us, and we'll help you with your plan.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you. We just have a few more speakers with some very valuable information, and I'd like to next bring up Tim Gibson, who's with Merrill Lynch, who has some final thoughts on responding to a disaster and business planning. Thank you, Tim.
Good afternoon, everyone. And after hearing the insurance speech, I'm also sad with my tree on my house. That didn't break anything. It's a pleasure to be here. Unfortunately, I know it's a very sad situation while we're here together, but I do have a few points for the business owners of things sometimes you may not think about when you're trying to be cool and find water and shelter. You still have a business to maintain. First, when it comes to banking, most banks have multiple locations. Take advantage of it. I know a lot of time we're used to going to our neighborhood bank or our neighborhood banker and seeing our favorite banker every week. If that branch is closed, guess what? The branch down the street, the branch next city over, the branch in the next state over, they have the same information. They can help you just as well as your neighborhood banker can help you, so don't be afraid of calling over to, we're not saying Albany since they don't have power, but if it's Ohio, it's Virginia, wherever it is. If you're with a national branch, take advantage of it. They all share the same information. Your information is not secluded to only that one branch. If you're with a credit union, sometimes credit unions also have networks that you can share within when it comes to ATMs and checking accounts and things of that nature. Even though it might be just that one location, they often share what's called the STAR network, where you can use multiple ATMs. So you still have the ability to get to cash and be liquid and get things you might need. Like Mr. Kendrick said, contact your payroll provider. Unfortunately, that is not something you can really be flexible on and say, oh, I'll get to it later. There are laws that say you have to pay people. And right now it's a great time where people need their money. So this is not a time to think, oh, I'll get to it when the power's back on. Contact your payroll provider now. If you don't have the cash liquid right now in your account, you might want to work something out with them to move money around, contact your merchant reserves. I'm not sure in the insurance world what could you have, but as he said, there's not many things covered from finding out today. But again, check with your insurance agent. You might have been the lucky person to pay that extra $20 a month and get some type of coverage to protect you in these times of needs. But again, contact your payroll provider, work out a plan. Hope is not a strategy. You can't just hope things will work out. You have to plan for it, so be proactive. One of the biggest things also, any vendors that you owe money to. If you're a restaurant, you have food supply trucks coming in and you're not open, contact them. Because guess what? They may not realize you're closed, and they're still going to come. And they're still going to charge you for the food they're bringing to you if you're not able to receive it or not. Also, if you have bills you need to pay and your computers are down, your systems are down, be proactive. Don't wait for them to call you. Make a plan ahead of time. Say, hey, we're out of it. Give them an estimated time. Because just like you're a business owner, they're a business owner. They have cash flow needs just like you have cash flow needs. In that same conversation, also contact the vendors who owe you money. If you have local companies in town, you know, hey, this person owes me, they have to pay me X number of dollars every week, they might not be able to pay you. Find out when they will be able to pay you so you can also have a cash flow statement and know, okay, I need to make payroll in 3 weeks, I don't have this money coming in, what can I do? Again, hope is not a strategy. The last thing, use your advisors and your brokers. You pay insurance brokers, you pay financial advisors, you have bankers that work for you. Again, they work for you. Don't be afraid to say, hey, Mr. Insurance Guy, I know you're busy, but I need your help. I can't read through this 50-page document. Can you, in plain English, tell me what I have? Call your financial advisor and say, hey, my business is short on cash. What are my options? What can I do in order to make payroll next week? They're paid professionals for a reason. Don't be afraid to use them. You might not realize that, hey, you might call your insurance guy, he might say, hey, well, you do have, as he said, the mechanical, whatever, whatever insurance that he said you might have. You never know. Next thing you know, hopefully you don't have a $5,000 deductible like he had. And you can actually get some help and some relief. You'll be surprised to find out all the insurances you paid for. Before I came, actually, I called a couple of insurance companies I use, and there are so many clauses within a business insurance package, you will be amazed with things that are covered and things that are not covered. So again, just to wrap up, and again, I'm not going to keep everybody long. I know we all have business to get back to. Again, banks, they all work together. Believe it or not, your bank is not on an island. There's data other places. Your money is not lost. Second, make sure, please, contact your payroll provider. If we're hearing that power is going to be out through the weekend, you have payroll to make on Friday, don't wait till Friday to make the call. Don't wait till Friday to say, oh, I couldn't check my computer to see that the cash is not in hand. Contact your payroll provider today. Again, you pay them for a reason. That's why you pay them every month to do your payroll for you. Or if you do it yourself, make a plan. Contact your banker, contact your insurance agent, contact whoever you need to assist you because you must make the payroll. Again, your account receivables and your account payables, contact them all. Start making a cash flow statement to know what do you have coming in, what do you need to have go out. You don't want to ruin your credit over the situation. A lot of the major institutions like banks, they are flexible during natural disasters. So if you have a mortgage or a loan, if you call the bank and say, hey, they watch the news. They know what's going on. They know what's going on. They have offices and locations. They're flexible in these times. I know Bank of America has an entire business continuity plan for their customers. So if you have a Bank of America loan, they often give extensions and waive fees for these types of situations. Same thing with Chase, BB&T. They're pretty friendly in times like this. And the last point, use your advisors, use your bankers, use your agents, use your brokers. They work for you. At the end of the day, all these people who you employ, who we all work hard to keep your business, these are the times we need to step up to the plate and help. So if anyone has any questions, I try to keep it brief. Please feel free to see me after.
Thanks a lot, Tim. Matt Sutton from the Charles Ryan Associates is going to share some quick tips on how to communicate effectively with your employees, with the public, with your customers in times of crisis. Matt?
Thanks. Again, my name is Matt Sutton. I'm the Vice President of Charles Ryan Associates. A couple of things I wanted to talk to you about communicating. When we think about crisis communication, it's usually crises that we've created ourselves. This is a little bit different situation because it's not something that you've done, but what you have to be concerned about is a crisis that you had nothing to do with can quickly become your crisis if you don't communicate effectively. I was at a speech about crisis communication to a person who worked down in New Orleans and down in the Gulf after Katrina, and they're still finding that people are using businesses or not using businesses based on how that business acted during Hurricane Katrina. If they were open to the public, if they let people come in, if they were nice to their employees, people remember that stuff, and word of mouth spreads very quickly. You might think you need to contact your insurance person first, your lawyer first, your IT guy. That stuff's all important to do, but don't forget about your public image. Because during this time, people will remember if you were there for them or if you weren't there for them. When you are communicating, whether it's with your employees or with the general public at large, there's one key thing to remember. Simply tell them the truth. And that's important, and it's something that we have hard times with because we think we want to hide stuff. We think, well, I don't want to tell them that I'm going to be shut down for 4 days. Well, guess what? If you tell them, I'm going to be shut down for 2 days, and then somebody shows up at day 3 and you're not open, they're going to remember that. Be honest, tell them what you've got, and tell them what's going to happen. Make sure your employees know what's going on as well, because they're the ones who are talking to their neighbors. They're the ones who are talking to the people at the gas station and the store about what you're doing. If you're not communicating with your employees, and they're saying, I don't know what's happening over in our office, that's a problem. Not only is it an HR problem considerably, but it's a public perception problem because they're your advocates. Also remember that if you are open during this time and you deal with customers, how you treat them now is going to go a long way towards your image. I don't know how many of you have been glued to your computers, especially if you don't have power, but Facebook and Twitter have been abuzz with all of what's going on out here. Reporters are driving around the gas stations looking to see what's open, what's not open. They go inside and interact, and then they're tweeting about it, and then people just in general are doing the same thing. You might not be open, or you might not think people are looking at you, but right now is the most important time that you can possibly be friendly, I guess would be the thing. I mean, just be friendly, be open, and let your employees know that. Sit down with them, tell them, hey, I know this is going to be a long day, I know it's going to be tough, but this, right now, today, is going to impact what people think about us for not only tomorrow, but a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. It's very important that you're very open with folks. Monitor social media, however you can do it. Make sure that you're paying attention to what's going on. That's something we have to think about. But in times of crisis now, social media dominates and takes over. Anywhere in the world where you see a crisis occur, whether it's big or large, that's how communication is done nowadays. Make sure you're paying attention to anything that's being said about your company, and make sure if you're able to feed information through that system. It's very important to get out there. I was remarking the day that Friday and Saturday, a lot of folks were tweeting updates and things like that. It's very difficult if you didn't have cell phone service or if you didn't have power to get that information, but it lives out there forever. And folks now are starting to get power, they're starting to get their cell phone service back, and that's how they're going to look for information. It's how I knew where to go get gas on certain days, it's how people knew where to go get ice. It's out there, so make sure you're monitoring that, because 1 or 2 bad things that are said about you, hey, I went to gas station X and they were a bunch of jerks, they tried to jack up the price of ice and they weren't very nice about it, that will hurt your reputation for years to come. There's no doubt about it, people will remember it. Again, remember your advocates, remember your employees, remember your customers, the people who are going to go out and spread the word. Word of mouth is going to last in this situation. It's one of the best and only forms of communication. Your website may be down, you can't communicate with people that way. The TV stations have a lot of other reporting to do, the newspapers have a lot of other reporting to do. Getting that information out there is going to be important whichever way you can, and word of mouth is going to be the best way to get it out there. And the last thing I'm going to say, and I can hang around as long as you need to answer some questions if you have certain questions. Take this time, reflect on the situation that happened, and put yourself together a crisis communication plan. Again, you might not have caused this crisis on your company, but it doesn't mean you don't have to deal with it. And what we can't do is figure out how to communicate after a crisis has already occurred. Right now it's very difficult to figure out what am I supposed to do. But take this time now, put yourself together a little plan. It doesn't have to be, I put together crisis communication plans that are 500 pages long. It doesn't have to be like that. Get a document that has employees' names, phone numbers, email addresses, forms of contact. Get all that stuff in one place, in one binder. Lay out a process. Okay, if we lose power, this is how we're going to communicate with you, so that your employees know what to expect in time of a crisis. And let them have a look at it. Let them know what's going on. And that way you'll be able to tell people, if this happens again, this is what you can expect to do. Again, we can't go back and retroactively create a crisis communication plan, but now we know what to expect. You know this scenario. You know what happens if you're out of power for 3 or 4 days and how hard it is to communicate with people. Put together yourself a little plan that will allow you to have something that says, okay, I'm without power, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to tell people what's going on. That's very important. Take some time, and now is the best time to do it because you just lived through the experience, and you're just coming out of this experience, and hopefully out of it much quicker over the next few days. But take this time now, whether it's take the holiday or take the weekend, and put yourself together a plan that's going to allow you to know exactly the steps you're going to take if something like this would happen again. Again, the last thing I'll say, and I'll reiterate it, and I can't say it enough, be honest with people. This is going to be a time where your company or your business is judged. It may not be fair, but it's going to be, and that's the way it's going to handle. If it's something you don't do, if you have air conditioner and you allow people just to come in and sit, even if they're not a consumer of yours or a customer of yours, people are going to remember that, and word of mouth is going to spread. So make sure you're out there telling people the truth and being as friendly as possible, because your brand will be affected one way or the other out of this. You will be judged whether you realize you are being judged or not.
Thank you, Matt. And before I turn it over to our final speaker, I'd just like to let you know that the Alliance has a lot of communication channels. We have e-blasts, we have a blog, a website, we're on Twitter, Facebook. If you have essential information that you would like to get out to the community at large or to businesses, please send it to Matt Thompson. I'm volunteering. mthompson@charlestonAreaAlliance.org, and we will forward that information out to the community. So it's different hours, services, products, you have gas, you have ice. Let us know. We'll be happy to include that out in our information updates. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Christina Oliver from the West Virginia Small Business Development Center, who will talk about some of the resources that are right here, not only in this building, but throughout the state to assist small businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
And I'll make it brief because this has been wonderful, but it's also been a lot of information. How many small businesses do we actually have here today? Okay, well, God bless you all. The bad news is there was a disaster. The good news is I think it's been abundantly clear you don't have to go through it by yourself. The Small Business Development Center has a network of business coaches that can help you be proactive in your planning, and then also sitting with you to help you figure out what you need to do next. Today with me is one of our business coaches, Justin Gall. Justin, would you stand up or let everybody know? Justin is housed here at the Charleston Area Alliance. We have 13 centers across West Virginia, but we're a network. So even though we have 13 singular, we'll go anywhere, okay, where entrepreneurs and small businesses are. What I brought with me today in the back, a packet like this, it's a very simple disaster recovery guide. It's just a real simple bulleted point document that lets you know some of the things like check your insurances, your technology, those kind of things. And there again, like I say, you don't have to do this by yourself. How many people have a business coach here or have someone that, an advisor? You need to lean on them. You need to call them up. You need to be proactive about getting in touch with them. Don't feel like you have to do this all by yourself. Some of the things in the guide that I don't think were mentioned here, I mean, assessment was mentioned briefly. Most everybody have iPhones that have cameras on them. Go around, take pictures of some of the damage that was done, and you'll have it. You know, contact your insurance guy or gal. And now, you know, we talk about preparing a strategy. Well, it's kind of after the fact right now, but it is a good lesson to learn moving forward, because you can figure, okay, next time I got to be proactive. Do that with a business coach. In your packet, we also have a little rack card that has our Business Ask Me line. It's an 800 toll-free number that you can call and ask questions. If you don't know who to call the Business Ask Me line. We will make sure that we'll connect you to someone who can sit down with you and talk about next steps. Like I say, in a disaster, usually the number one thing that runs out quickly is patience, because you become frustrated. Back in the day when I had my business, we were out of power for 9 days. And so I understand what you're going through. Additionally, in the packet, we have our current staff listing. So you can call all these folks. You have my card. Feel free to call me as well. There again, you don't have to do this by yourself, and there's no reason why you should have to. So call the Business Ask Me line. Take a look at the step-by-step disaster bullet sheet. Call a business coach. You know, sometimes it's good to know that you can call a business coach and just sit down with them and say, man, I don't know what to do. You know, and there's power in someone across the desk saying, I understand, and we'll work this out together. We'll take it in small bites. So thank you so much. I think this has just been wonderful. Like I say, there's a whole lot. So God bless you all, and call the Business Ask Me line. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina, and all of our speakers.
There was
Yes,
one
please.
more thing, I almost forgot, our SBA partners. They will be announcing through FEMA, and that's another bullet point in this document. It tells you what types of disasters, when they declare, and what that means. Exactly, and it's all lined out. So feel free to pick one of these up. If you need extras, let me know.
Thank you, and we will continue to our best ability to forward this information out to the businesses and the members and the community to keep you up to date. Hopefully this situation will be resolved soon, but if events warrant, we will have further briefings for the community to connect you with the resources. We have a number of board members and Alliance staff, and I don't know if I've forgotten any closing comments. I know you're a small business person and on our executive committee. Others, just questions or important information that we haven't gotten to yet?
I want to thank the Alliance for putting this event on today. It's been helpful. At least I now have some clues where to look in my commercial insurance policy. Not that I will necessarily understand it still, but I'm afraid I might be like the situation with the tree that fell in the yard, not on the house. Fortunately, my business property did not incur damage, but we are without power and don't know how long we will be, and are trying to function out of everybody's homes and Shoney's and First Watch and on ourselves.
Well, thank you, and I'd again like to thank the public officials or government representatives, Dave Mulgard, and of course Tanya Hotmer, who's front and center on all these, the whole situation. And Tanya, if you have any closing comments or to be continued.
You know, closing comments, we're communicating as best we can. Appalachian Power Company is tweeting, Facebooking. I personally, I've been tweeting, Facebooking nonstop, even though I was in Missouri when storms hit. And as my husband drove, I was updating the whole way back. You know, don't feel free to ask questions. We're starting to reach a point where, you know, the